What's up guys, Intellitech Studios here, and today we'll be doing a full, I would say in-depth comparison, but there's really not much to compare between the two machines that I recommend the most, despite them being very similar. This is the official comparison video between the Sanitaire SL4110A and the Bissell Big Green Commercial Pro Bag BGU1451T. And this is going to be a relatively quick video because there's not too many differences. We're going to go over them really quick. But before we do that, since I have two Sanitaire SL4110As, we're going to briefly compare the two, as there's only one difference that I noticed. Both these machines came with pretty much all the same accessories, although I did replace the crevice tool on the one that I've had for many years. But the only difference that I've seen so far comparing these two units, besides obviously this one being 5 years old and this one being brand new and having a much newer manufacture date, is the hose. So on both the Big Green and my older Sanitaire, it has a hose that looks like this. The actual collar that attaches to the hose wand is kind of this plasticky rubbery material, although it's not at all sticky or anything like that. The new one actually has a larger hose connector cuff thing. I don't know what you call that, but either way, for whatever reason, it's larger on the new unit that I just got. I don't know if there's any practical difference or not, but for whatever reason, it's different. So this one has a little bit, not more hose per se, the hose is the same length it seems, but this one actually, I wonder if it is a little, it might actually be a little bit longer now that I think about it, because this only pulls out that much, but this appears to pull out a tiny bit more. So perhaps if you get a current one of these, the hose is ever so slightly longer, with this cuff connector being a little bit larger, but it otherwise is identical between the two units. So to my knowledge, that's the only update that I have found between these two units. The filter also appears to be slightly better quality on the new one, but that very well could just be because it's not worn like this one, which this one, if you're curious, was manufactured in 2020, on the 16th day of 2020. And this one's a 10 amp motor made in China. And this one is also a 10 amp motor made in China, but this one was made on the 120th day of 2024. So, even though I just bought this, it was sitting in the warehouse for a little bit. That's really the only difference between these two machines that I have found. Just that slight upgrade on the hose. That's not the pause button. Oops. Alright, now that we've looked at the new SL4110A, we're going to move this aside and just focus on the two machines, the SL4110A and the BGU1451T. Now, the differences between these two are very subtle, but there's a couple minor differences. First is price, because they tend to sell for different prices. I don't even remember their MSRPs off the top of my head, but the most common price that I've seen for these on sites like Amazon and Walmart are typically around $132 for the Big Green and around $145 for the Sanitaire. Now, they do frequently go on sale, and when the Sanitaire goes on sale, it tends to go for as low as $100, which is usually the best deal, and the Bissell goes for about it usually stays and hovers at around $132. Now, generally, at their current price, $145 and $142, this machine is definitely the better buy because it is a little bit cheaper, but they're similar enough that if you're kind of torn between the two, then the price could tip you one way or the other depending on which one's cheaper. But right now, I generally recommend the BGU1451T over the Sanitaire, mainly for a couple reasons, and I'll get into the differences really quick. Now, starting off with similarities, they're both the exact same commercialized version of the old school Bissell Power Force 71Y7-V model from the early 2010s. They have the same motor as that machine, at least in general, and they have the same stretch hose that was introduced on that machine, with the exception of the update that I showed earlier. They basically have the exact same performance, they have the exact same length of cord, length of hose, and the exact same, well, almost the exact same filtration. The Big Green has slightly better, but it's, from what I understand, it's virtually identical filtration. Now, they also both have metal reinforcements in certain parts of the machine, like the height adjustment wheels and the pedal release, to allow for a more durable design. So a lot of the problem points on the consumer variants have been addressed on these units and reinforced with metal, so that way they are not the brittle plastic that snaps on the older units. So they're both an upgrade from the consumer version in that regard. Now, we get into the main differences. The first and most obvious difference is, of course, the color. I like this color for commercial use, and I like this color for domestic use because blue and silver are some of my favorite colors. So that made the choice easy for me because this one is a little bit better for commercial use, and that's for the two other reasons I'm about to mention that are different. Now, that while they both have an identical quality 30-foot cord, the Sanitaire's cord is fixed to the machine. As you can see, there is no break on the cord, whereas on the Big Green you actually have a lawnmower style pigtail cord, which means if you do somehow damage the cord, the replacements are definitely easier to install, as you don't have to worry about rewiring a cord. That's a point for the Big Green. The Big Green also has slightly more rubbery plastic, and as a result, the entire machine is, yes, a little bit heavier, but it's a little bit more flexible, which would lend itself for an even better durability than the Sanitaire. For example, the bag door, we can see it does twist and move a little bit on the Sanitaire, and it is still kind of a rubbery material, but it's still a bit of a harder plastic finish. So this feels a little bit more accurate to the original machines, but it still is a durability upgrade. The Big Green, however, and this does make the bag door a little bit harder to remove on my unit, the plastic is even more rubbery and even more kind of a soft touch finish than the Sanitaire. You probably won't recognize the difference unless you're actually using them side by side, but that's something that I have noticed. The plastic feels to be a little bit more flexible, which might lend itself better to commercial environments where it might take more shock. The wheels are virtually identical, and as far as the height adjustments, you got the same 5-position height adjustments and the exact same brush roll and belt setup in both. They both come with sort of dark tan colored paper bags out of the box, but I both recommend upgrading them to the Clean Fairy Style 7 HEPA bags, which of course fit in both machines perfectly. And both machines come with a standard post motor filter that's black, but I recommend upgrading them to the HEPA filters, which of course are available for both, as they've been available since the old school CleanView 2 and Power Force and Power Glides. So yeah, all of those machines, or I should say all of those filters and all those little accessories and differences. What is the point of the sentence I just made? Okay, ignore the sentence I just said. That didn't make any sense. The attachments are the same as I mentioned earlier. They both have the exact same short stubby crevice tool out of the box, but it is replaceable with a newer unit that's longer, and the handle is the most obvious difference between the two machines that you notice at a first glance. The Big Green commercial has the two-piece style handle that's been famous on so many Bissells, and the Sanitaire has actually a single-piece metal handle, which a lot of it's going to be personal preference. I prefer the original handle, but I like the metal handle as well. I guess the grip that's on here could be a little bit longer, but it's perfectly fine. And technically speaking, the handle is probably better on the Sanitaire because it's a sturdy metal and there's no play to it, although there's a little bit of play on the new unit. Whereas this, since it is that rubbery plastic, it does have a good amount of flex to it. It definitely wouldn't break or anything, but it does have a little bit of flex. And at that point, there's pretty much no other differences. A lot of the differences are fairly subtle, and the parts availability is a little bit interesting because technically the Big Green commercial version has a ton of parts that are available on the website. The Sanitaire, at least last time I checked, doesn't advertise parts being available for it, not any to my knowledge. But of course, if push came to shove and you bought this machine, you can use the parts from the Big Green on this because they are, of course, interchangeable. But if you're wanting parts that match, that also would push you towards the Big Green. And that's another reason why I tend to recommend the Big Green slightly more than the Sanitaire. But again, I like them both equally, and for me, my solution was just to get both. Use the Big Green at work, at the store that I have, and, well, not have, but I work at, and use the Sanitaire at home, where the color scheme I like a little bit more. Not having a pigtail cord isn't as much of a problem, and the Bissell Big Green's slightly more upgraded build quality compared to the Sanitaire, works better in a commercial environment, and the Sanitaire is plenty durable to be used at home. I've yet to have any issues with it, despite using it as my most common daily driver ever since 2020. That's almost 5 years at this point. So yeah, very subtle differences between the two. To do a quick rundown again, they're basically the exact same machine at heart, But the main differences, besides price and color, are the Big Green gets you a big tail cord but has the original handle that's a bit more flexible. The Sanitaire has a subjectively better metal handle but doesn't have a pigtail cord. And otherwise, the parts that you're going to find available are going to be more so for the Big Green than the Sanitaire, but of course they will fit both. In fact, honestly, the entire video could have just been that. But anyways, this Intellitech studio is signing out with a relatively in-depth comparison between the Big Green commercial BGU1451T and the Sanitaire SL4110A. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like in the comments below. And I'm going to brush Rocco in the meantime, which these tools work great at. Oh, please don't scratch my vacuum, sir. Works good at brushing hair off of a cat. Yeah, and the tools are of course the same amongst both the units. And they're durable.